Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel Crane, and I am the program director for the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship. And you are listening to Global Industry Spotlight, a conversational series focused on providing resources and insight for the creative entrepreneur. We are streaming live out of the Comcast Business Startup Studio, a room designed for Chicago's small business community, located at 2112, Chicago's first music, film, and tech incubator. The Global Industry Spotlight today is on Anthony Spina, a highly creative and collaborative beverage leader with a proven record of success in leading innovative marketing initiatives for nationally recognized organizations. Together with Matt Sievers, he's creating SYSTEM ELECTROLYTE CHARGED SELTZER, the first inclusive drinking system meant to fill the void in a rapidly changing beverage industry and give choice, control, and consciousness to the modern beverage drinker. A variety 9-pack that includes three 12-ounce cans of 0% alcohol content, 5% alcohol, and 8% alcohol content. Prior work experience has included senior brand manager for White Claw Hard Seltzer, brand manager for Old Style Beer and Field, and cultural marketing for Pabst Blue Ribbon. Anthony is a great friend of 2112. I'm excited to have him on here today. We were just having a conversation about how we connected at Underground Wonder Bar 10 years ago, so let's bring him in.
Hey, how's it
Hey,
going? That's
great.
still one of my favorites. Again, Chicago and especially the Midwest is, such a city of 3 degrees of connection amongst great people. And that was one of those where you're like, wait a second.
Right,
Were we drinking Malorts at Underground Wonder Bar
right.
10 years ago?
Yeah.
And look at that, how things all come together. So it's beautiful.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's kind of like we were just talking about how when people come to Chicago, Malort is such an iconic brand of like, oh, you have to try this, right? If you're going to come here, this is what you're going to try. And how it took a long time for that to become something. And it started with just, some shot girls at Underground Wonder Bar, pushing Malort and people being like, wow, this is very intense.
No, well, it's so amazing too to see, I think that's always the piece when, people talk about kind of like, when things happen and it
Mhm.
always seems like it just kind of happened overnight. And if you really, really start to take a deeper look and kind of deconstruct some of the kind of like cultural phenomena, it's things it takes time, and you really look for the kind of seedlings that are planted. And yeah, Malort's one of those kind of great, examples. I mean, I remember you know, when I was running, Old Style was the piece of like the Chicago handshake, and this
Right.
concept where it was like, it's like that was made up in a bar like 5 years ago, which is pretty wild to think. And it's like, yeah, you have this whole kind of like movement and renaissance that kind of happened to get to it where it is today. So there's a
Yeah.
lot, a
And
lot that
so,
happens in the background.
yeah, and you've been involved in this industry from just many different aspects for a long time. If you could just, kind of talk about your journey, your quick journey, with all the different, companies and marketing stuff that you've done for, nationally recognized brands, and then we can kind of jump into System Seltzer. So yeah,
Oh
let's
my
hear a little bit
gosh,
about your background.
totally. No, thanks. And like, that's always it used to always be so interesting to me of how people, end up where they are. And the whole piece. So, I mean, I actually did my undergrad in sociology. And so, I've always had a lifelong kind of passion and frankly curiosity on how, how brands become more than a brand and something that is bigger than itself. And again, that comes to actually connecting and being a part, of culture. And so the piece, you're like, well, how does that happen? Like, what does that look like? And so, when I was in college, I was working in think tanks, and which was a really interesting experience to see, how a lot of larger organizations, I mean, really the concept of like coming up with like ideas for ideas and looking sometimes, 5, 10, 15 years out, and really kind of having that mindset, because anything that's truly manifesting itself like right now in society probably had the seedlings 10 or 15 years ago. And there's this whole kind of like analogy of like this whoosh moment, when you're pulling back this kind of like cultural rubber band, the second that it's let go, it seems like, oh, this just happened overnight. You're like, no, this was building for a long period of time. And so,
Right.
my background. So I actually so did my undergrad in sociology. Ended up in all these, working in like think tank, and at
Hmm.
one point I was actually working for Universal Music Group. Running like Island Def Jam record label for promotion for the Midwest, and also this was around the Great Recession, and so we were throwing parties at nights. And so I was one of my favorites is there's this long time running Chicago party called Rehab at Debonair Social Club every Monday night that actually won best party in the U.S., which is actually, I guess, was a thing that they used to have awards. But
Right.
it was funny because so I was working during the day, throwing parties at night, and then basically I'd always admired Pabst Brewing Company. I mean, basically, it was Pabst and Red Bull at the time that really had lifestyle and culture marketing and things. I mean, it was just like I've never seen anything like this, and it was just remarkable. And I had the opportunity to join Pabst, and really see many iterations of from my experience. I mean, one of the best field and culture marketing programs. I mean, in the industry, and then was able to move over into brand management for Old Style beer. And I mean that, I mean, I could go on and on. And it was something that, you have this iconic Chicago, but also like the Midwest brand that,
Right.
at one point, I mean, in the 80s was like, like number one beer in Chicago, and it has such a storied history. But, unfortunately, it's like it had been, sequentially declining for, 20 something years. And it was the ultimate kind of quagmire of a brand where it's like, what do you do with it? Because it had such strong ties to, the Chicago Cubs. But
Right.
so then when I was actually managing it, another larger supplier came in and actually bought out. It was actually the longest running sports sponsorship, in MLB history. And they came, and kind of bought it out with some new ownership group, and it was like, oh my gosh, what do you do, right? I mean, that's basically the brand's only identity at this point. And so, it's always these things where it's like, how do you, and of course, we had very minimal budget. I mean, Chicago's one of the most competitive markets from a
For the
beverage standpoint.
It is.
I mean, and then there's money thrown around. And so the great thing when you don't have any money, it basically forces
You have
you
to
to
be creative.
yeah, well, it forces you to think differently. You don't really have an option.
Right.
And so that was always the piece is, I mean, I came up from street level. I mean, and so it was always that piece.
And so what some so you're throwing parties at Debonair, you're involved in the nightlife scene here in Chicago. You're working, in the beverage industry with some very iconic brands. What were some of the things that you started to pick up that you felt like, hey, maybe, I would be interested one day to do my own beverage?
Oh, well, so this was always the pieces. I mean, I came in as a total outlier. I mean, I always
Hmm.
kind of joke where, that was kind of the beautiful thing about, Pabst at that point is that, a lot of us came from backgrounds that were non-traditional. As I said, I was nightlife and music essentially, and sociology, and so you had this really really interesting mix of people, but you start to really see like what are the genuine drivers, right? And what makes a brand more than a brand and a product more than a product? Because you look at again beer, and it's like there's hundreds of beers out there, but what makes something more than that? And I think one of the biggest things was community building. And I mean, there's really nothing more powerful than building something that's greater than oneself or greater than a brand. And again, I know like the word like lifestyle marketing is always kind of thrown around a lot, but if you can really be there in a tangible way to connect with people in a real authentic and meaningful way. And I think that was the other piece is understanding like the infrastructure on how to actually build that out. So that's permeated anything I've ever done. And so with Old Style, one of the I always joke it's like one of two times that I cried at a bar was actually when we found out for the first time in 22 years that Old Style was actually positive. And it's
Wow.
like positive growth. And the big thing was that again we had a shoestring budget. I mean, again, a great leadership team that really believed in some of the things that we were doing, because So I go back to the Cubs thing and you go, what do you do? And it was like, well, wait a second. What if we, again, did something that what's the one team in Chicago that everybody supports? I'll never forget, I
Mhm.
posed the question. They're like, the soccer team? And it was like, no, not the soccer team, and they're like,
Right.
I don't know. It's like first responders,
Mhm.
Chicago Fire Department, right? And then
Right.
again, this is where you kind of play a little bit of your kind of like, sociology card and say, well, if you think about, again, the Great Chicago Fire, such iconic films as like Backdraft, but also like, you know, the community of firefighters was something that still to this day, I mean, it was so remarkable to see, the camaraderie. And again, I mean, it was just such a powerful community. And what we did is that, instead of throwing money into like influencers and all these kind of things, we said, well, what if we change the packaging during the summer to actually take 10 cents per case and give back to, the IPPFA, the
Mhm.
EMWQ fund. And the EMWQ fund is basically, when unfortunately someone is killed, in the line of duty, in line of service, they're the first people that are at the doorstep with a check.
Right.
Because a lot of times, for the family, I mean, obviously you're dealing with something that is just no one could ever fathom. I mean, but they're like, "Oh my god, how do you pay rent or your mortgage or groceries?" And so it was so powerful to be able to, do something that was so intertwined. Still to this day is one of the most meaningful experiences.
Yeah,
And
that's
again,
incredible.
shout out to, again, Tony Martin, Betsy Shepard, Bill Sullivan. I mean, the whole group. I mean, and so that was really special. But and then also looking at things that, again, like Chicago Handshake, where you're like, great,
Mhm.
and Sam Meckling at Malord, I mean, at the time is a legend in the game, and just so many other great people, bringing to life the Chicago Pizza Summit, and again, it was something that you're forced to create, but at that point, you're doing things that are meaningful.
Yeah, and I mean, and I think what's incredible is you're looking at opportunity spaces, and being creative of like where does this fit? I know I was definitely very surprised when all of a sudden everyone started drinking PBR. And or even that the iconic like, old style here. Like that's when you talk about old style, I think about the guys yelling at the Cubs game.
Yeah,
And even the signs outside of bars. Um, and the dive bar kind of resurgence of like
totally.
all of those things, kind of I feel like fueled a lot of this going back to the classics.
Well, and so that that's the other piece too, is that you have these, especially in times of, transition too. A lot of people, they look for that kind of stability, and a lot of, especially with the last the last great recession, as is now being, dubbed. It's like you have this moment where people look for, familiarity in kind of transitioning times, but then also like the piece of what are the things that really, that make Chicago great, and what are the things that make our community? And that was always the thing. It's like, our neighborhood bar culture is something that, again, there's really nowhere else in the country that really has that. To be honest, I mean, again, Chicago is a city of neighborhoods, right? And it was really great to see that kind of come back, because those are the true community centers at the end of the day. And a lot of people don't have, again, these wonderful bars like nestled in, to their neighborhoods. So, I mean, look, it's like Innertown Pub, Happy Village, Rainbow. I mean, Easy In. I mean, frankly, what Isaac's done over there, and at the Native too. I mean, it's just I love to
Mhm.
see, again, these kind of taking these classic establishments and then really bringing them forward, but in a real authentic way. And I mean, what Cafe Mustache has done, I mean, Cole's Bar, I mean, don't even get me started. Again, those are people
Right.
that I look up to because they're building community centers, and at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Yeah,
Yeah, and it seems to be, just a consistent theme when you're building a brand or as an entrepreneur or working in that industry. Is like you have to find your community, right? Who are your people? And so moving forward with this new venture that you started, talk a little bit about. I just love this inclusive drinking system. Uh,
oh, thank you. No,
you
thank you
know,
so much. And that's, the big piece here is just going from, almost 10 years and just kind of like classic American sub premium domestic lager to White Claw. I mean, that's what just like Still to this day, I mean, you have Phil Rossi, Sanjeev, Justin Kelly. I mean, just such a great team. And, some of them were former Pabst colleagues. And, it reminded me of kind of like, you know, the PBR, Pabst Brewing Company that I entered into was very entrepreneurial, I mean, it was, big ideas and this whole kind of feeling that there's something really special happening here. I mean, I can remember writing decks of what is a hard seltzer, and where I mean, I remember doing raw manual like IRI polls, and forever thank you to Dan Wandell and the category insights team, Mark Anthony Brand, because I was never trained in data analytics, and to really be able to follow the emergence of a segment that literally didn't exist 6 7 years ago, and now that's dancing around 10% of total beer in the US, and also that's literally gone global in a short period of time, is just remarkable. And so you're looking at kind of like this meteoric rise of what we're kind of dubbing like foundational hard seltzers. And the biggest thing, again, kind of like leaning on some, sociology learnings, is that you look and you say, well, what's driving this, right? Because domestic beer in the US is not growing. And so there
Hmm.
has to be something here. And, the bigger kind of zeitgeist shift is this whole kind of like, better for you space, which of course, you're like, yep, I mean, we know that that's happening. But now that we've kind of reached, like a kind of like foundational seltzers, the big piece was, I mean, for us was taking a step back and really looking and it's kind of like there's something happening here bigger that maybe any of us even realize, and it's a shift in the way that people are actually drinking. And this whole component of like, you know what if I told you that, like, and again, I mean, the word inclusivity is very powerful. You cannot fake that. I mean,
Right.
you cannot throw that around. And so it was like, I looked, I mean, and I've always operated on real-time insights, right? Because again, you can't buy them. You have to feel them, you have to live them. And so what we were seeing around us is that, a lot of people were kind of reassessing how they were engaging with alcohol just in general. Because I mean, frankly, the height of, according to Pew data, the height of US binge drinking, binge drinking being like more than 4 or 5 drinks in one sitting. And you're like, that's binge drinking? And you're like, oh, that's it was in 1998 to 2002, and it's like, oh, that's why college was the way it was,
Right.
because that was normalized. So that's shifting pretty significant, in the US, because again, a lot of other countries drink differently as well. We've always kind of been an outlier, and so this piece, it's like, well, what if I told you that like drinking, since it's literally foundation, was exclusive? You'd be like, what are you talking about? And you're like, well, if you're not drinking, you're not part of the group.
Right.
And you can say, well, you can drink a LaCroix or an O'Doul's or this and that. You're like, trust me, if you're drinking an O'Doul's, I mean, call a spade, right? Like, you're not, people are still like, why aren't you drinking? Like, what's the deal? So the biggest thing is that we kind of realized when we were like, how has nobody done like a multi ABV alcohol by volume variety pack with a 0% option, 5%, and an 8%? And the more we started to think about it, again, see, we test marketed. I mean, we did this during COVID, but it was kind of like, there was really no data for this, which was kind of
Hmm.
remarkable.
That's
So it was
interesting.
really all, what we were seeing. And, again, like real-time case studies just amongst our peer group. And I mean, we did do some proprietary quantitative data, but it was like, oh my gosh, like this is happening. And it's been remarkable to see it play out in real time. Um, and the whole thing, my the goal and the dream for all of us, and again, bringing together a team that frankly is full of people that I've looked up to, and personal and professional heroes. Frankly, I mean, it's kind of like some of the best in the business. And it was like, what if you can walk into a room and say, I'm going to show you something that doesn't exist? And then of course they're going to say, well, what flavor is it? And you're like, no, no, no. Well, first off, and you're like, first off, it's something that has electrolytes in it. And you're like, wait, what? And you're like, someone told me 2 years ago, they said you'll never get electrolytes into alcohol. And I was like, sounds like a challenge. So
Right.
street legal. It's good. But it wasn't easy, but we got it. And so
Yeah.
that's the great thing, is that, that, but then also again, this pack, right? So it comes in this 9 pack, and it's like
Mhm.
that and there's so many, it's been such a beautiful journey to see. It's like almost like the mouse wheels, in people's head. You see it and they're like, wait, hold on. So and they're like, "Do they taste the same?" And you're like, "Oh, there's flavor continuity between all 3." So you can literally ladder up, ladder down, but the most important thing too is that, you know, if you're not drinking, you're a part of the group,
Right,
you
and
know?
I also just like that you can curate your own drinking experience as well. I remember you talking about how, you could even start with an 8% and just kinda work your way down. I also know that from a lot of, other brands and kinda company pitches and data that, younger people want to be involved and kind of curate their own experience, right? They want something immersive.
Absolutely.
So to be able to provide something like that for them is great, and then on the great side, that people that don't drink or whatever, it provides them an option, and they don't have to, like, drink a O'Doul's or LaCroix and are able to be just kind of a part of the group. Um,
Totally. And it's been honestly, it's been that's what's been one of the most fun is that, again, you're in a genuine white space, right? I mean,
right,
where it's just like nobody there is no, exact way to do it, which makes it really fun because again, it's kind of like a choose your own adventure type scenario where again, you could go all in on the eights and then go the zeros, go the fives. I mean, literally, you're navigating your own drinking experience, but more importantly, you have choices.
right,
And that means you have a little bit more control, maybe a little bit more consciousness too, because I mean, there's a lot of times where I mean, I remember I got to well, there's a couple of things. It's like, I mean, for me personally, I mean, I went through where, you know, I I just casually stopped drinking for 6 months. And it wasn't like,
mhm,
people always be like, oh, well, like what happened or what was the
right,
reason? And you're like, I don't know. I just kind of like it's just different speed. And,
right,
it wasn't like some like specific reason. And it was kind of like cool. And so, the hard thing is you'd be out and be like, "Oh, let me get a vodka tonic, but hold the vodka," or something,
mhm,
and you feel it's kind of like an imposter type thing. So you can it's like you're like fake drinking, but
right,
so, the whole thing was like, yeah, now you have something. And then the other piece too is that, you can totally, tailor anything to and even like, it's one of those where you're like, "Hey," you know, I love talking with people because they all come to their own conclusions of like the use cases. We're like, "Wait, with the zero, so like so you could drink that in the morning, or you could drink that during the day, or you could mix with that." And you're like, you could do anything with it. And that's the great thing is that, it almost becomes fun to see what people actually do with it. So it's been really, really rewarding on that front.
yeah, and I mean, in terms of what's next, right? So what are you guys working on right now?
Yeah.
You
Oh
you
my
did
god.
you did a big name change.
Yes,
Um,
okay, and that was one of the I used to always have this running joke, where I was like, I'll push any good idea forward until an accountant or a lawyer, or legal counsel tells me that, it's impossible. And so one of the biggest things was that, this is a new to world concept, right? And we were
right,
like, let's test this in Illinois and Wisconsin and see how it goes. And so, the initial name was this kind of like primer, right? We're like,
mhm,
this is your base coat of hydration.
right,
And, my biggest thing is like you can do all the market research in the world, go out and do 100 samplings, right? And
mhm,
see what happens. And so what started to happen organically is, the bigger picture where it's like, yeah, great, we have electrolytes now, and that's awesome. One of two essentially in the US, but other people will come with that, and that's
mhm,
not going to be enough. We need something that basically is bigger than anything else out there, and that's where the system became the real big thing. And especially getting the trademarks for the first inclusive drinking system, the first non-alcoholic hard seltzer,
right,
and saying
right,
we wanted to be essentially like the Kleenex of tissue, right? Where if someone's like, oh, yeah, someone else came out with a, multi-ABV variety pack, and it'd be like, "Wait, isn't that what System already did?" So it
right,
literally becomes ubiquitous with what we're really trying to accomplish. And the great thing too is that, so we did the name change, which was like, I mean, I literally, we spent the last 2 weeks, I mean, we flipped, about 30,000 cans. We pulled it out of the wholesaler and literally just, again, thank you to Good City in Milwaukee and then Pilot Project here in Illinois, in Chicago. Says, yeah, great, you guys can come use our facility. We knocked it out. And so literally it's a hard market refresh. So,
right,
it goes straight through. So we pushed that. And then also, we are coming out actually with a 5% variety pack. So that will be, just a 5%. of the black cherry mango, and then a new flavor, lemon lime. And then also the other thing too is like, the 0%. The
Right.
0%'s basically, that's the chess piece on the board. What if that 0% had CBD?
Mm-hmm.
So we actually have a CBD and terpene mix that we've been working on for, I mean, literally months. We're basically like, we're done with the R&D, and so
Right.
that will be coming out soon.
Mars Brewing has a great CBD one. I think that theirs is my favorite.
Totally. I will, and that's I was gonna say my biggest thing is that, I mean, the CBD space is so interesting. A lot of it for me is kind of like some are better than others. So let me put it this way. It's kind of like, my old thing
Right.
was like, as I said, the running joke was like, yeah, that's what the world needs is another hard seltzer, right? And you're like, no, this
Right.
is
Right.
not another. This is something
Right.
totally new.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Right. Right.
it's a sugar brew base, which
Yeah.
is distilled from cane sugar. But like, look, if you're gonna do a CBD drink, have it be a CBD terpene mix, and have it be something where, I mean, we tried it and we were like, whoa,
Mm-hmm.
I've never tried anything like that. So yeah, that's the whole big piece is that, we're looking for what's next essentially. And that's where, I mean, what's happening in beverage right now is like, I mean, this cross pollination of alc and non-alc is, I mean, it's remarkable. And then also, I
Right.
mean, to understand where you're like, look, THC infused is also like, I mean, that's the future, right? And so obviously when and where legal for a lot of these things, but really setting up a portfolio that's really built for the future. I mean, we had, I mean, I tasted something. We have a collagen drink that we're working on too, which was just like unbelievable. And so the great thing is that we can really go in any direction, and we built the infrastructure. Again, my favorite question to ask anybody is always like, if you could do anything, what would it be? And basically, it's like this. So
Yeah, that's and Anthony, congratulations to you. It sounds like such an adventurous time and building a unique and one of a kind brand, and also just kind of applying your own experience as kind of a beverage industry expert and lifestyle marketing and being able to test what works and what doesn't. If you had advice, for an entrepreneur who is interested in building a CPG brand, what would be kind of your like, here's my 2 sentence thing. This is what you should do.
ooh, oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much. And as I said, this and some of this will sound kind of cliche, but again, it's like it is 100% true. Is that if you're thinking of doing it, do it. Taking that leap, there will be no more exhilarating, scary, I mean, every emotion, and they always show the emoji of like the roller coaster of the entrepreneur.
Right.
It's 100% real. I think the piece is that if you're ever thinking about it, just do it. A couple things that actually were like interesting learnings for me. Well, one is that it's actually, this is Dave Holmes, the original creator of Spike Seltzer. He said this to me when we were first kind of talking. He said, hey, look, you're married, you got kids, significant other, whatever it may be. And he's like, make sure if you do that, that person is 100%, ready and understands what the journey does entail, because, it's not for the faint of heart.
Hmm.
This is 24/7. I mean, you're committed. I think the other thing too that's been, really helpful, and this is for me, I mean, I always look to pay it forward, is that, look for the helpers, because there's people out there, and you are now in uncharted territory, right? There's no playbook for this. There's no, you can't learn this in a book, right? You can't learn this from, I mean, yes, you can take courses, which is great, and read books. I mean, do as much kind of like, background as you can, but just doing it, because there's things that will happen that you couldn't even fathom. And so the big thing is like, reach out to people, ask for insight, ask for advice. I mean, the community of people, of entrepreneurs, it's been so rewarding to see. I literally just got off the phone with another founder, in the similar space. And he was like, hey, can I pick your brain on something real quick? And it was kind of like, absolutely, give me a call. And, the cool thing is that not everyone can't know everything in this space. And so find, whether it's a great mentor or just frankly other people that, you're kind of on the journey with, because it's also just sharing learnings. I mean, that's the other thing where it's like, and also there's going to be 1,000 mistakes that are going to be made.
Right.
Just that's the name of the game. So it's almost like my big thing is like, let me help you, so you don't make the same mistakes, and it helps us all because there's always going to be costly mistakes, and no matter what you're doing, nobody is an expert in creating the future, and so that's the big thing. And the other thing I'll say too is that one of the dreams, for all of us, and I was like, look, the concept of like owning something and having a piece of something. And I was like, we went back and forth on, all the different kind of like ways to like, fundraise and all these great things. And the piece was like, you know what? What if we opened up, again, we went back and forth. I was like, what if we opened up a WeFunder and said, hey, look, anybody who, has ever wanted to be a part of something or has any interest or, this and that, let's genuinely build this community with our community. And that's been one of the most rewarding is to see people say, wow, because again, it's like a lot of the stuff is just done on the back end and it never actually really gets out to the general public. Most people are not accredited investors. And so it was like,
Right.
let's take a certain percentage, of the raise and let's open it up, again, to anybody. And that's been the coolest thing is to like see people who, have been like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. Like I'm in, and you're like, whoa, no way. And that's been
Yes, I'm,
really
I'm putting
cool.
that below for everyone. You can check out the website wefunder.com/system seltzers. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
fantastic.
it's been really rad because, again, it's like that whole piece where you're like, you get to go to, a bar or, you're going to buy something and you're like, oh yeah, like, there's a little piece of that. So it's cool because again, and that's what community is all about. It's like, look, this is something for everyone for every occasion in the best way possible. So
Well, thank you so much, Anthony, for taking the time to chat with me
yeah.
today. It's wonderful to kind of learn about your journey, make these random connections with Underground
Mm.
Wonder Bar and Foremost in Logan Square
Oh,
and just kind
totally.
of, see how these things are intertwined and also being able to understand Chicago culture, which doesn't want glitz and glam, it wants things clean and simple and
Totally.
it's great kind of watching this also, this kind of almost revolutionary system that you've built. System
Hmm.
seltzers, everyone go check it out. Follow Anthony. He's obviously, very um knowledgeable in the beverage industry and lifestyle industry of, how to market stuff, how to think about it, how to approach people. So, thank you so much again for taking the time to
No,
talk with
this
me
has been
today.
a total honor, and again, everything you guys are doing, I'm a huge super fan, and again, it's like, 2112, the whole squad, it's such a great resource. It's been so, just beneficial and, helpful on my end too, so I love it.
Awesome.
This is great.
Thank you so much. Well, there you have it. Wow. I mean, check out Anthony Spina, check out System Seltzers. I'm going to put it down here one more time. Go to WeFunder, join, the movement of what they're doing. It's incredible to hear about, a kind of new idea of how to drink, right? To be able to walk into a room and have a drink for everyone, I think is something that we can all get behind. So, please check him out. It's great to have Anthony here on a Global Industry Spotlight, hearing about the journey of an entrepreneurship. As you said, he said, just do it, go for it, find the helpers, talk to other founders. I've heard this a couple times with other organizations, like, talk to other founders who are in the same position, who have gone through it, maybe who, you could, ask for advice. I think that once you build that community, it will help kind of guide you in the right way. Again, my name is Daniel Crane. I am the program director of the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship, and this was another episode of Global Industry Spotlight, a conversational series focused on providing resources and insight for the creative entrepreneur. We are streaming out of the Comcast Business Startup Studio located at 2112, Chicago's first music, film, and tech incubator. Thank you to Comcast Business and Shure for providing the tools necessary to make our programming possible. Visit cceglobal.org to register for free workshops offered by our partners and us. Find us on Instagram and Facebook and tune in next Thursday for another episode of Global Industry Spotlight with Laura Castellanos, CEO and founder of Castellanos Strategic Communication Studio. She puts on an amazing podcast. I'm looking forward to talking to her about what she's building. Again, wishing everyone a great week. Talk to you soon and take care.